Coming up on Veterans Matters, Lakeland College Veterans Services Officer Blake Leitch talks about getting out in the community and spreading awareness of veterans and their needs. That's coming up next on Veterans Matters.
Well, I'm so happy that Blake Leitch has come back on this show. Blake, thanks for coming back on Veterans Matters. You were here, I think, in probably one of our first episodes. So tell us a little bit about what you've been doing. First, give me a little background in your military history. We'll start with that.
Sure. Back in '99, I joined the National Guard to play laser tag. And after that, I enjoyed it so much, I went active duty in 2001. And served 5 years of that, 1 year in Iraq, got out and began to get an education.
And so you're at Lakeland College right now. Tell us a little bit about what you're studying and what you're doing there as the Veteran Services Officer.
I'm taking classes for communication studies and organizational communication that transfers here to Eastern. And right now I'm currently working 40 hours a week just to be the Veteran Support Services Officer at Lakeland for AmeriCorps Vista. And just advocating for veterans and just making them aware of all the resources they have.
Okay, so tell me about some of the things that you're working on in your role there.
It goes from anything to where I'm working with the spouses of the military, the widows of the military, to the students, trying to just one-on-one with them to explain what benefits they have. And for example, a lot of veterans that come in my office don't know they have 5 years of free medical as a combat veteran coming out. So things like that make a huge difference in their lives, and without my office, that might not be possible.
So what are some of the most common things that you're hearing or questions that you're getting from people that come into your office?
Where's my money? A lot of veterans right now, a lot of student veterans right now are really concerned with why they're not getting paid, why we're 2 months into the school year and they still haven't received any of their pay. They've got children, they're married, and they've got to pay the bills. And I'm trying to just stress to them that it's not Eastern's fault, it's not Lakeland's fault. It's really just a clog in the system that the VA just doesn't have enough resources to process this, so they're just backlogged that much.
So we were talking before that we started the show. How many new veterans are there expected to be within the next 5 years?
Yes, the estimate is 500,000 new veterans in the next 5 years, and that's a whole lot of veterans, but more importantly, that's a whole lot of more veterans back into the educational system.
And which is a need for people like you to help those people sort of transition back in, but also get their paperwork and everything filed and things going. Because it can be a kind of a confusing process from what I understand.
It's a daunting task. and really, you look at a veteran, and a veteran's supposed to come into the civilian world and be a civilian again, and veterans will never be civilians again. They'll be veterans. And they out-process out of the military, and then they come to a school and they say, okay, where's my checklist? Where's my processing checklist? Because that's what they're used to, a very structured system. And that's not how it is in the civilian world. So it's great to be able to sit down with the veterans, each one of them one-on-one, and say, okay, here's a checklist. Here's the things that you need to do to make it where this process is more seamless, and it's going to be easier for you and your family.
So you had talked about there is such a backlog with veterans being able to get their educational benefit money. What are you telling them?
Number one is it's not the institution's fault. It's not Lakeland's fault. It's not Eastern's fault. And the best way we can advocate is together. Having all the veterans come together and unite. It's really hard right now for that because the veterans, they just got out and they don't need the support of the school because they just went out and fought a war. So it's really that battle for me to get them to come together and then we can go to Congress with numbers and with Student Veterans of America and say, look, we are a group of people that deserve this, and we've been promised this education benefit, and we're not getting that. So there's strength in numbers, and we were taught that all the way through our career in the military, and just to translate that to them is important.
We've talked several times on this show about the GI Bill and educational benefits. Are most veterans taking advantage of that, do you think?
I think the ones, I have to say yes, because I see them all in the higher education realm. I don't know what number of students are out there because they don't know about the GI Bill, or they just are afraid to use it, or they've heard the war stories about it and they're not using it. I'm not for sure what those numbers are. I'm afraid to know what they are, but I would hope they're low, because I hope the students or veterans aren't afraid to come to school because they hear those stories.
So let's talk about another area that you're, passionate about, and that is getting out into the community and sort of educating our community about veterans and how we can all come together. What are some of the things that you've been doing to better that community connection with non-veterans and veterans?
Sure, I've really just hit the community really hard, all the civic organizations. Just this morning I was speaking to Charleston Exchange Club, just getting the awareness out there to the business owners, to the doctors, to the dentists, to the lawyers, the CPAs, to let them know that yes, they can help, because everyone wants to help a veteran, they don't know how. To let them know, let's get a organized group together to where I can bring you a veteran and say, this veteran is having this issue. Can he hasn't had teeth cleaned in 4 years. That's very realistic. Can we get a group of dentists together and say we can give veterans a free cleaning once a year?
And so what's been the community's reception to some of these ideas?
So far it's pretty good. They like organization though, and they want to see this all together. So that's what I'm working on, is building that. My hopes is within the next year I can have some form of 501c3 set up to where they can come together, because I would be the same way. I want some kind of solidity there so I can know what we're giving to or what we're committing to. So that's what I'm trying to form right now, is that organization.
Are there some misconceptions that, people like me, or non-military people who don't have any experience with military or veterans, that we may have about veterans coming back from war? I think it's getting better, but I think there's a lot of civilians out there. That's what I call you. You're a civilian. They think we just got. We're the best trained individuals in the world, and I think they want to help, but they don't know how much help is really needed, because a veteran's not going to be the one most of the time going out there and say they need the help. So that's why I'm trying to make that call of action, and trying to make that need known, because if someone doesn't know the need, they're not going to fill it. Right. So I've got to get out there and get the need out there to the community. I know they're going to react once they know that there's a need there. It's just getting it out there. Now, we've had several veterans on the show who are like yourself, out in the community, interested in doing this. But do you find that there are still veterans who choose to, remain kind of isolated and not getting out there back into civilian life?
That's the hardest part, because those are the exact ones that we do need to reach. The ones that are they're in their house or in their apartment and they're just keeping themselves, they're going to work, coming home, go to work, coming home. Those are the ones I really want to reach, because those are the ones that probably need the most help. And they're just, there's so much pride that they just served their country and fought a war that they don't want to ask for help. And those are the ones who really need the most help.
And why do you think they're reluctant to ask for help? Where do you think that comes from? It
was ingrained in them that they relied together on each other in the military. They always had a battle buddy, a team that fought next to them, that would give their life for them. They see a civilian and they don't see that there. So if they don't see it out in the civilian sector, I think what they're tending to do is just clam up, because there's no one out there that would die for them like their fellow soldiers that they were with would have.
Okay. Tell us about how your experience in the military is now helping you sort of with this drive to help veterans. How are you taking some of your past military experience and applying it to what you're doing right now?
I would say just the loyalty and, well, the duty as well is, I always had something to do when I was in the military. There was always a mission. And when I first got out, I didn't have a mission. And I needed a mission. So it took me a couple of years, and now this is my mission. So I think that's what everyone that gets out of the military, the majority of them need, is a mission. And that's what's driving me, is a sense of duty to keep going above and beyond the call of duty, and continue to help my fellow veterans.
So what are some of you talked a little bit about some of what you're doing as far as community outreach and creating, a network with veterans and businesses. What are some other things on your plate that you'd like to get done?
Well, I recently started selling T-shirts, actually. They just simply say, I Heart Vets. And I sold those at the 4th of July and the Bagel Fest. And I've sold about 750 shirts now. And through that, I've raised over $3,000 for a scholarship. I would like to continue that, either through T-shirts or any other fundraising aspect of helping the widows, helping those that may be wounded and they can't go to school, but their wife would like to, and their benefits don't transfer to them. It's building more resources for them. I had an individual in my office just the other day that she didn't have a support system. She lost her husband, and it's been a year now, and she was told to go back to school to get her mind off things. Well, she did, and that was great advice. Except for she doesn't have a support system now. And she just was ready to explode because she was just trying to put all this weight on her shoulders herself. And I think everyone in the community would agree with me. She shouldn't have to do that. So it's building that network of people that can just help her.
And that's probably one group that we tend to forget about, are military widows. The husband or the wife, was in the military, had all the support, and they've passed away, and now you've got the spouse left with, again, no support system.
Yeah, there's I don't know the number, but there's over 1,200 in the state of Illinois. I don't know what it is national-wide, but there's a lot of families that are dealing with injured and lost spouses. So
let's talk about resources in our community. You have people like you. We have a veteran service officer here on Eastern's campus. What other sources are out there, resources for veterans in our Charleston Mattoon community that they can seek?
I think the number one thing is going to the Mattoon Clinic. And there on Lakeland Boulevard, a lot of combat veterans don't know. Once you get out, you have 5 years of free medical. That could help so many people that just don't know it. It's the best kept secret in town, and that's number one. I would say your VFW, American Legion, they're all there to advocate for you. The Lakeland campus and Eastern campus, as you mentioned. But just getting out there and doing stuff for the community is another good way of just getting that sense of accomplishment again, is just going out and doing stuff for the community.
And we had Bill Highland on a few weeks ago, and he's a Vietnam veteran, and there's some of those older veterans that are working hard to help the new veterans, which I think is a really good thing. So it's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bill Highland is a great example of one of the older guys that are really helping us just learn how to take the reins, and really we're going to be the leaders of the community and just following his lead.
Well, Blake, we've got just a few minutes here. Let's talk about Veterans Day. It's coming up in November. What does that day mean to you?
Veterans Day to me is it's a great opportunity for America to just stop for a day and just recognize the millions of veterans we have in this nation and what they've done for us and what they continue to do for us, the sacrifices they continue to make, and not only them but their families, just every single day what they're going through and what we can do as America. If the government's not going to step up, let's step up as America and just get behind them. And that's what I see on Veterans Day. It's just America coming together. Forget the politics, forget the Republican, Democrat. Just come together and just be America.
Yeah, and we've got several great activities lined up here on campus, and as well as a lot of the communities around East Central Illinois all have Veterans Day activities.
We're pretty fortunate in this area to have a community that does have several events.
So what's next for you, real quick? You're be finished here at Lakeland, and then you're coming to Eastern, as I understand.
Yeah, I've already done a full year at Eastern, so I'm coming back just to finish up, really.
Okay.
So I'll have hopefully have my degree by the end of the summer, and just go out there and try to save the world one veteran at a time.
That's a great way to put it. Thank you so much for coming back on this show, and again for all you're doing locally to help our veterans. I know you've got great things in your future.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
All right, well next we're going to head to Crawfordsville, Indiana for a tour of the Ropkey Armor Museum. This museum strives to preserve military history and heritage, not only for the public, but more importantly for veterans and their families. Take a look.
When I was 8, my grandfather gave me my great-grandfather's Civil War pistol. So that started me off. That same year, my dad brought me a War of 1812 sword. And that same year, now that I was primed, I went out and found my first sword. I still have those, plus a lot more.
And that's no exaggeration. Take one look around the Ropkey Armor Museum and it's apparent that Fred has amassed an impressive and historic collection of armored vehicles.
I bought my first armored car when I was in high school. When I graduated from high school in 1948, and I think I bought this 47. It's right back over here. And I used to drive that to school on occasions, and that was always a lot of fun. Girls like going out in armored cars. In the earlier days of collecting, particularly of armor, which is a pretty elite type collecting. Not everybody wants or can afford what we have here. But the people that can are it's a close-knit organization internationally. We know people all over the world, and they know us. But it's just one of those things that kind of gets out of control.
The collection includes tanks from World War I up to the present time, armored support vehicles, a patrol boat, helicopter, motorcycles, a current issue Marine assault boat, plus hundreds of artifacts, photos, and memorabilia. One of the most common questions that Fred has asked, where'd you get all this stuff? The answer, all over the world. The tanks are all U.S. made, but at some point in history, they were sold to other countries.
Just to give you an example, a lot of ours were used during World War II by various countries, and people are surprised when I tell them that 2 of my tanks came from Brazil, South America. And by the way, I get Brazilians in here, you know, and they're interested when they see that. And it's because we furnished equipment to these countries to train with. We did the same thing with Canada. So we sent these vehicles down there. The government bought them. Those governments bought them. And then at some time later on, they were scrapped. That's when we grabbed them and so forth.
Fred comes from a long line of proud military service on both sides of his family. He served as a tank platoon leader in the Marines from 1949 to 1955, including the Korean War. His time in the military furthered his collecting interests. By 1982, he decided to turn his private collection into a museum, with a mission to preserve and share military history. In 2004, he moved the museum from just outside of Indianapolis to rural Montgomery County, not far from Crawfordsville.
It was truly divine guidance that I think brought us here. And we love the people in this area. We love the people in Crawfordsville have done so much to make us feel at home.
A majority of vehicles are housed under a new heated and air-conditioned building. One thing that makes Fred's collection unique, all of the tanks and vehicles are fully operational.
What we do here is make our stuff run. It doesn't take as much brains or effort to just paint it up pretty and set it and drag it around. Besides, you get a double hernia real fast trying to move a tank. So we like them to go under their own power.
In addition to making them operational, each piece is carefully researched and restored. Skip Warville is the museum's restoration expert and curator. The process is documented through photographs, which are displayed throughout the museum.
Well, this little tank right here is known as the 6-ton U.S. made, the first American-made tank. It was originally called a special 6-ton tractor. It really isn't 6 tons, it weighs 7.5. Don't ask me where they got the 6 tons. There's only 2 of these in operational condition. One's in Missoula, Montana, and there's this one. This is the finest one in existence. It drives, it does everything it's supposed to do. It was such terrible shape that people didn't think it could be saved. But the impossible we do right away. I mean, difficult we do right away. The impossible takes a little longer. And this was 6 years. And luckily I had an original manual, and that meant everything. World War I manual. Yeah. What's really interesting about this is when you get into all the little interesting things that they were not using radios. They were testing with radios the First World War, but they weren't successful. So each tank carried 2 carrier pigeons, and your audience can't see it. And right behind this tank is a hutch with 2 carrier pigeons, with stuffed carrier pigeons. They've not been waiting to get out all this time. But and so when they were the tanks, let's say with Patton in charge or whoever was on the line of departure, ready to move out and smoke and couldn't see anything, they released a carrier pigeon, and hopefully it would get back before some German saw it and shot it down, because that happened all the time. But it's that little interesting things that you find out about this stuff that makes it more than just a big piece of metal. It makes it, it's part of history.
One piece in the collection that's still a bit of a mystery is the yellow submarine.
We're still determining exactly where that came from. It's old. We know that it came from Lafayette, Indiana, where for years it sat in front of along the levee, along the Wabash River. But kids would climb on it and stick beer cans in it and everything, opening. They'd try to get something, they'd scratch their names on. And the city decided it was a liability, and so they sent it to Winsky's big scrapyard up in Lafayette, Indiana. And there, luckily, there was nice folks that owned that place. It didn't scrap it. It sat there, and it took me about 5 years to negotiate a deal out with them, but they are wonderful people, and they saved it. And so we're researching it, but it's a 2-man submarine. It's a real submarine now, and it's old. We thought originally it may have been used in the Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but we haven't seen it in that, but it was something. But that's part of the mystery.
Because the collection is operational and the fact that Fred can actually operate these huge machines, Hollywood has called upon him to supply tanks for movies and television. His credits include The Blues Brothers, Tank, and ER.
I was on Daley Plaza during the Blues Brothers chase scene, and we tore up more stuff, but most of it wound up on the cutting room floor. There was so much carnage in that of vehicles getting torn. We had a wonderful time, worked right with Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, and we had armored cars driving through downtown Chicago. That's a whole nother story.
And speaking of stories, Fred feels his collection is more than just supersized pieces of machinery and aircraft. Each piece has an important story to tell of its mission and the people who operated it. This Vietnam-era helicopter is a good example.
It served 3 tours of duty when we checked the serial numbers with the 114th in Vietnam. And we took that to Louisville, Kentucky for the reunion several years ago, and a lot of the surviving pilots and gunners and family members signed the inside of that, which is, again, it's a very emotional thing, but some of those are signed by killed in action family members. There is a helmet in that belonged to the door gunner who was shot through the face, shot right through the helmet here, came out the side. He survived, and he's been here, and he was with us down in Louisville, and he donated his helmet, which is in there, the original helmet that he was shot through. And again, it becomes very emotional, very personal, but it helps people release things and talk about them. It's hard for me.
What started with his grandfather's Civil War pistol at age 8, today Fred Ropkey's Armor Museum is a place that keeps military history and heroism alive for all who come here.
This is a lot of work, a lot of money. But it's what I believe in. You know, you only go around once, so you might as well be doing something worthwhile. And I've done a lot of things. You know, I was a salvage diver at one time. I served in the Marine Corps as a tank officer. But I've done a lot of neat things, but we believe it's important to share with the veterans and the veterans' families.
Hi, I'm Erica Borgren, Iraq veteran and director of the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs. Our mission is to empower veterans and their families to thrive. We do that by providing long-term care in our veterans' homes, by developing programs to address the mental health, employment, and other challenges veterans face, and by helping veterans navigate the complex system of federal, state, and local resources. Our agency is home to a team of veterans whose sole job is to help other veterans. But we can't do this work alone. We need Illinois veterans to stand up and be counted so we can better understand our veteran community and serve you better. We are calling on all Illinois veterans, even if you've personally transitioned well and aren't in need of any services, to log on to our website to stand up and be counted. You have already stood up to answer the call to service. Now, stand up and be counted to help the entire Illinois veteran community. Visit veterans.illinois.gov.